apart from teaching, my job involves also doing research. So effectively, I need to do as part of my job what you guys need to do, which is do a lot of reading, come up with something that's original, that I haven't plagiarized from other people, and write it. So I just thought I'd give you a little bit of an insight into the process, the very basic framework of how I do it. And I think it's the kind of portable technique that you can adopt and take into your work as well. So I just thought this might be a little bit useful. So effectively, of course, the whole process starts with searching, and the quality of what you produce in the end as a result of this process really comes down to this foundation that you lay at the search level. I like to occasionally start with some big picture article. Now, at your stage as being a student, it's fine to go with something like Wikipedia. Now, of course, we don't want to see Wikipedia used as a reference, or you can use your textbook as a foundation search of a particular field, so that you just get your head around what it is you're thinking the topic will be about. You're looking also for technical terms here that relate to the topic. Now, for example, the assignment that you're working on at the moment, that's due next week, is about safety. So you'll look for words to do with safety or accidents, maybe in the index of your textbook. And just to give you a hint, for those of you who've actually bothered to watch this, that one of the terms that you're probably looking for is safety culture, which is two words which you can put in quote marks when you get to Google Scholar or the CQ Library. Now, the CQ Library is an excellent place, and as you can see, here's an advanced search option, which has got a lot of wonderful additional features, like find all my search terms, find any of the search terms. You can limit your results to full text, journal names, or even just put the word journal in there if you want to limit it to journal. But you can also, over here, tick boxes. So just go through and check the boxes that you find interesting. Now, this is clearly one that you should be looking at. Scholarly peer-reviewed journals. We're obsessed with these things in academic circles. I won't bother explaining why, because that's not the time and place. You check that, and then you can move on to the second stage of actually reading articles. But just before I finish with the search term issue, it's actually about finding the sweet spot of search terms, as I like to call it, where you do not find too many articles. Who cares if you can put in a search term, for example, psychology, and come up with 45 million articles? How useful is that? You actually want to limit your search terms to the point where you're getting maybe 200 or 300 articles, or a few less than that, to browse through quickly, to scan through in Google Scholar or other forms of search engines. Now, at the second stage, you need to read, and you don't want to read everything. So I'd suggest at this stage, focus on reading the abstracts, the introduction, and then if they sound interesting, if the abstract sounds interesting, go to the introductory paragraphs, and if that sounds interesting, go to the literature review, and if that sounds interesting, go to the conclusion section. For empirical articles, which are the articles that contain actual research, where they've gone out into the field and looked at a series of accidents or different workplaces and looked at accidents. Empirical work contains a whole chunk in the middle that describes the particular study and how it was conducted. You probably don't really need to go into that kind of detail with being a student. It's sometimes interesting, and it does teach you about good quality methods and good quality research, how it's done. And you should learn to critique this. You know, if a study has big, bold claims, but is basing its big, bold claims on one tiny little case study based on 25 interviews where they spend 1 hour with 25 people, and I've done such studies myself, you have to ask yourself, can you make these big, bold claims on the basis of this small base of empirical evidence? But focus on these components, because that allows you to get through 10, 20 articles without breaking your back or giving yourself a headache. Now, I've mentioned search and read as two serial components. You do that first, you do that second. But in fact, you search, you read an article, you see, ooh, better search terms. That maybe is the technical term for what I'm looking for. You then go back and refine your search until you hit that sweet spot, that area that you know that you're dealing in the area that you want to deal with. So those two, search and read, do go hand in hand. And similarly, I always write while I'm searching and reading. I'm doing those things in a very quick cycle, and we'll be talking about that cycle very briefly right at the end. But this writing stage is often writing very raw material, half sentences, bullet points. But I do take care, I take a lot of care to make sure that everything I say at this stage I reference so that I know where I got it from. I don't have to go hunting for it later. So I set up my screen. I have two screens. I set up my screen with, a search engine like Google or the CQU library, a PDF document, which is the article I'm reading currently, and a Word document where I copy and paste material from that article into, keeping in mind plagiarism, and from the Google Scholar I'll immediately grab the reference and paste it in each time. So every bullet point will have a reference to an article, so I won't need to go and hunt it later. So I'm doing this search, read, write process in a literal sequence, like something out of a science fiction movie with two screens in front of me going from there to there to there. And that helps me get through this work quicker. Now, if you do what I just said, which is copy and paste material, you do need to be extremely careful to ensure that this is this issue of plagiarism, that you don't accidentally find yourself plagiarizing when you finalize your essay. Copy and paste it well, but do something to let yourself know that you've copied and pasted. So bold it and put a reference with a page number next to it. This section is word for word out of that article on that page. And that way you're very, very safe. So when it comes to your final version, anything in bold is still dangerous. You need to deal with it. You either need to put in quote marks with a page number and say, this is a quote from so-and-so on this page, and that's acceptable. Or you need to write in your own language with a reference, and then you don't really need a page number, by the way. You can, the Harvard style has that kind of flexibility. With quotes, don't overdo them. If your essay is just one stitched together sequence of quotes, even if you've not plagiarized, that is, you've put your page number and your reference at the end of each of those quotes, that's still not acceptable in this level. We expect you to digest, grab the essence out of stuff, and put it in words, and then quote. But at this stage, feel free to create these temporary subheadings and make them as small as possible so that all your material gets chunked nicely into themes. You sort all your material into pure content. This is all about safety culture within oil rigs. This is all about safety culture theory. This is all about flaws in safety culture theory, or whatever. I'm not trying to predict which way you'll do it, but try and sort stuff into a smaller theme as possible. And when you're doing that sorting, you'll notice that more than one author very frequently will say the same thing. And that produces these really nice sentences that I love to see, where you say, so-and-so said this, so-and-so agreed, or blah, 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 and then put two references behind the blah, blah, because it reflects the fact that two authors agreed with one particular point. If authors disagree, and this does happen a lot, and great scholars can still not see things quite the same way, you can also use that in sentences very nicely by saying, so-and-so says this, but this has been critiqued by so-and-so who says that. Now, I do want to emphasize that this is worth going to. The Academic Phrase Bank from Manchester University, University of Manchester, have a good solid rootle around in this. It's a word I haven't used for many years. In this particular website, you'll find all sorts of stuff you are absolutely free to plagiarize. So, for example, being critical, if you click on that, you can grab phrases like, a major criticism of blah blah's work is that. One question that needs to be asked, however, is whether some of these words are a little bit long-winded, but they're all good quality English material that you can use. And there's a whole reams and reams of this material. And read some of this stuff about good academic writing. this is probably one of the best sources of material on the net that you can get. So remember, every sentence that you write, every bullet point that you write in that early process of getting material together, you cite it, you reference it, and if necessary, to a page number, so that you can actually use quotes later on, really good quality quotes, something that captures something so beautifully in 10 or 20 words. You can put that quote marks around that, put a reference and a page number behind it, and Bob's your uncle, that's fine. Don't, as I say, overload your articles with quotes. In a 3,000 word essay, you might want to have a big quote that is absolutely beautifully captures the nub of your argument. You can have a big quote, just one, let's say, in a 3,000 word essay, that'd be fine. Now, we do expect at this level that you do reference almost everything you say. And I often get asked, why? Isn't that a bit boring? Why can't I have my own view? And the reason is because you don't have your own view. Almost everything you say, everything you think has come from someone else. Very little of it's original. And things that you think is original isn't original. It's already been thought of by someone else. And it can be seen as a form of plagiarism if you're writing something, claiming it as your own, when it's a well-known theory and a well-known finding already. So the best and safest way to approach this is do a thorough research and reference most material that you write. And the Harvard Style Guide has a nice way of thinking about this, which is on the net, which you can look at. Now, I've sort of said very crudely before, and we're almost done here, I've said that, you'll search, read, and write, very loose term, write, all in one sequence. Even with two screens, having everything open at once, you're just continually doing all three of those things. That's true. That writing stage, however, is pretty, it's a bit much to call it writing. You're really just writing little notes almost. And then this process involves then shuffling that notes into themes and, this will be good in the introduction, I'll shuffle that into the introduction. You can use those subheadings to create this shuffling process. I actually use Word, and I use Word 2010, and then you can actually create subheadings and use headings buttons, like heading 1, heading 2. And when you click over here on the navigation bar, so you can get that up by pressing Control F or Find, and you click on that particular one, sorry, I didn't have it on screen there, the navigation bar, and you click on the one on the left, it will bring up that group of stuff that you can see here. All the headings will be up there nicely, and you can then click, I can't do this as this is a photo, but you can actually click on that and then drag it up and reshuffle, literally reshuffle at this stage. And the whole section, I should say, everything that you've written under theme 1 here, that whole section will then be shifted with it. It's a really nice feature of Word, and that's how I do my final shuffling stage before I get to the polish stage, which is the final stage, where I actually start to massage these chunks of plagiarized material or these bullet points into a holistic paragraph or sentence. And that's it. That's how I do it. I search, read, cite, write, and shuffle in a big cycle. I'm often going back from writing to searching. If there's a gap in what I'm trying to say, I'll go and find some material to fill that gap. And I do all these things in a single flow. Now, you're not expected to do brilliant work at first year, even at this level. But this is all ways in which you can start to become more competent at writing these kind of academic reports. And remember, in your future career, or in your current career, you may think of as the world as being academic and real world, this big divide between the two, but it isn't really like that. The reality is that the world, almost every problem that you come across in management as well, has already been dealt with and explored at academic level by people using very careful studies. So you can gain a lot of inspiration for your real-world work from checking out well-controlled, well-designed, well-conducted studies in Google Scholar or the CQU library. And instead of just coming back with your armchair opinions to your bosses or your colleagues about a particular problem, you can say, oh, look, this has been studied fairly extensively, and this is what they found, for example, about accident rates in factories. So this isn't the academic ivory tower versus the real world. I think you can bring these two worlds together. Anyway, hopefully that will be a little bit helpful to you, and I'll post this up now up to YouTube.